Hello to all members of SUG Chennai. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I welcome you all to the webinar on Paths Forward on Sitecore, XM Headless or XM Cloud with our special guest speaker, Jason, who is the VP Engagement for Fish Tank Consulting, and he has received Sitecore MVP 4 times. I thank you all for joining in this exciting webinar, and I thank Jason for accepting to share his expertise and taking out of his busy schedule. Now let's dive into this wonderful webinar. The stage is all yours, Jason.
Thank you so much, Katata. I was very honored. Thank you so much for inviting me here to speak. It's been a little while since I've had a chance to talk to SUG Chennai, so glad to be here. Good evening, I guess, for most of you. Good afternoon for those of you here. It's morning over here, which is why I've got really harsh lighting here because there is no sun yet. But eventually the sun will come up here today. Today, I was hoping that we would get a chance to talk about XM Cloud and going forward. I have done a lot of these kind of similar types of discussions with migration and things like that in the past. And today I want to focus more on the choice of the option. So when we go and we decide we want to go headless, is XM Cloud actually the place that you want to go? I mean, spoiler, I think XM Cloud is the place where we should be headed. But that being said, let's look at what the options are, because for some scenarios, it doesn't make sense. Now, if we go and, sorry, I'm just going to get this working. Here we go. I have met many of the names that are here on here, either at previous SUGs or at events or other calls. However, for those of you who have not gotten a chance to meet me before, my name is Jason. I am currently leading over at Fish Tank, a team we call it the engagement team, and it does all kinds of different stuff, whether it's connecting with the community, creating a lot of content, traditional sales and marketing stuff as well. Like, we do all kinds of different things. If it's not building stuff, it's probably what we're trying to deal with. I am outside of work a father of 3 wonderful girls, including 2 of them being twins, and all of 3 of them are having their birthday within the next week. So it is a busy time here in this household, and this weekend I have a lot to get done. Outside of that, I am a huge lover of music. Used to be a musician, don't get the chance to play much anymore. And I'm also a writer. Those of you who follow me on jasonstcyr.com would know that there's a lot of not Sitecore stuff up there. I won't say that it's great writing, but I have a lot of fun doing it. And I get to, get a chance to tap into some of the stuff that I like gaming, particularly tabletop RPGs these days. I get to do my own world building and running as a GM for some of my friends who are into the D&D stuff. So I get to do a lot of stuff outside of the work, but here I get to be part of this community, and I've been able to do that for over 13 years now, which is pretty awesome. At the top, it was mentioned I was a 4-time MVP. It's been a while since I've gotten my last MVP, and I'm hoping this month that myself and some of you who are here on this call are going to get some good news at the end of the month. Well, I want to add one more onto that list if I can. In between, I was over at Sitecore, spending 7 years leading technical evangelism and developer relations and stuff. So got a real good chance to connect, work with a lot of the community. But today is going to be about talking about headless. Why is XM Cloud got benefits? What are the benefits for XP? Which one kind of like makes sense in which scenarios? I want to talk about serverless infrastructure, why that is really the rage right now and why the industry's headed that way. And then also some of the considerations and like gotchas that we got to watch out for as we're making this move. What are the kinds of questions we need to be asking to determine what type of a migration towards headless really makes sense? Now, I would not be able to be here without the benefit of my employer. Fish Tank is a really great place. I'm so happy that I got to join. They've been doing this a long time. Dan, who's my boss, started this up back when he just wanted to like break out on his own, and now it's been growing and growing and growing. We've been having a lot of fun getting to take the business to a new level. One of the things that we are well known for is our blog. So we've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things up there, constantly publishing. Everybody in the company contributes regardless of your role. And I think that's one of the things that really drew me there. There was that chance where we give back, and we know that that also helps our business because we become this source of information that a lot of people in the industry, especially customers, wind up coming and visiting us when they need help with what they're doing on, and helps build trust. So that's something that I really believe in. And so that's what kind of drew me towards joining Fish Tank after being at Sitecore. But let's dig in. Let's dig in, right? What is the challenge? Why are people even talking about this right now when we've got, a lot of people looking at reducing budgets and, costs seem to be high. Why are people looking at trying to move to headless? I see that there are several problems right now. Technology teams, they're trying to modernize, but they're trying to get more efficient. They're trying to focus as a business. And there are some areas of XP that I think make that a challenge. I think the local development stuff on XP, it's starting to use pretty outdated MVC technology at this point. The full installations that are required, often in Docker now, so it is a little bit easier, but it's very frustrating if you're a front-end dev. If you're just trying to like jump in and do some front-end changes, that's a lot of overhead to think about. So it becomes inefficient. There's also, from a CI/CD deploy perspective, there's a lot of like custom build scripts. You've got deployment scripts. You might be doing deployments from a blue-green perspective, maybe automated, maybe manual, however you're doing it. But there's a lot that teams are having to focus on to keep the whole system running and get changes from dev over into your infrastructure. And then finally, when we talk about the actual infrastructure, you've got teams managing Kubernetes pods or virtual machines or app services, scaling out all this infrastructure for delivering the website. They're hosting the back end of XP. So you got XDB, the whole CMS, all of that stuff. And every time you've got an upgrade, all of that needs to be updated. So there's a huge kind of like weight of responsibility that falls onto the customer. So this brings teams to start looking at like, how can we modernize some of this, start offloading some of that responsibility and risk, and trying to potentially look at how they can save cost or at least get better value for the cost that they're doing. So we can do better. I think there are multiple options that are out here, but I want to highlight just a few. I think obviously there's always the option, stay on what you got today. So if you've got this outdated MVC and you're kind of frustrated with the workflow, but maybe just not doing anything is what makes most sense right now. I do think transitioning to headless is going to be the option that is a better choice for most people for a variety of reasons. And those two good options that I think we have there are staying on XP, but going headless. That allows you to use those modern dev frameworks that are available. You can get into serverless hosting. You start offloading at least the front end. You still have to manage all the CMS. You have to do all those upgrades on the back end. But it's an evolution, and you're aligning to the roadmap. It's a pretty good option to be able to look at and reuse a lot of investment you already have. Then there's the option of migrating to XM Cloud. So XM Cloud has obviously it's the only way to get the new UX. If you want pages or components, like that's the way you're going to have to go. But there's also like a new indexing layer that's there. And they also have that full like auto upgrade thing that's working in there. The deploy app is really awesome. So there's a lot of responsibility that gets pushed off onto the vendors. And that makes for a more efficient team that's inside the customer side. So that can be very appealing. Now, I'm not going to go through every line here in the table, but like when we start comparing, we can see like there's a lot of benefit to staying on XP, but going headless. And there's other things that are in XM Cloud. Like you can look at things like the SaaS hosting of the CMS backend. That's a great advantage of going to XM Cloud, get those auto updates. That's a big thing if you want to use the modern UX for editing, which is actually very good, and I'll show that later. That's only available right now in XM Cloud, so that's a good thing. But at the same time, it does mean going to XM Cloud, you have to change up your licensing. And if you're on perpetual licensing maybe, and you've got a really good deal, reusing your existing licensing can be very attractive. Also, we do have that customization capability, which is discouraged in XM Cloud. There are ways to use webhooks and kind of get where you want to go. But if you're really heavily customizing your CMS, and that's why you bought Sitecore XP, going on XP might be the right choice right there. So you can keep that kind of like high level of customization capability. There's also the idea of like, how much of the tool set are you using? Some customers are heavily into all the XP functionality. And if you start looking at XM Cloud, it has some light personalization, which works for a lot of customers. It'll cover a lot of cases. But you have in the composable world the idea of like, oh, I might need personalize or CDP or send, and like you start adding up extra licensing. So that can be a reason where maybe if you're heavily using all that XP stuff, you might get more financial benefit there. So those are a couple of options. But if we look at like, what's the value to the tech team of making this change at all, whether it's XP or XM Cloud, why is it valuable? I think the faster development cycles for a tech team makes you more efficient because you don't have to go through the entire process that you might do with like a .NET app. You can go to a more, Git flow kind of basis and be building in Visual Code, like having your site auto update as you're making changes. There's some really good stuff there and leveraging those next gen frameworks and all the advantages they have, whether it's Next.js or React or something else. From a serverless delivery perspective, the tools that have there, like Vercel and Netlify, they've got so many like built-in conveniences that we just haven't had before. It really is astonishing when you get into the flow and you just see how your life gets so much better, where you just like, oh, I hit a button, I check committed, and look, preview environments are showing up. I don't have to worry about that. Like it's now available for everybody in a few minutes, right? It's a very nice flow to try to get into. Now, obviously, when you go headless, you also have that capability to start leveraging your content everywhere, which is really helpful for developers. You want to be able to grab out of APIs. That kind of decoupling of the tech does help a little bit. But there's also value for this for the business. Now, I talked about aligning to the roadmap. If you're sticking with Sitecore long term, everything's going headless. But if you look at the wider industry, everything's going API driven and headless. Like that is the way stuff is going. So taking this on keeps that business moving forward and keeps it kind of proofed forward towards what's coming next. You start being able to get into a lot of reusability also of the frameworks and components and things that are out there as well. So like if you look at the tech that's being built today, if you want to reuse any stuff and become more efficient, what's being built is being built for headless technologies, for new next gen frameworks. So from a business perspective, you're getting more efficient, you're able to reuse more, you're spending less time authoring as well. If you start getting into some of the newer UX, it's really efficient. And I'll show you some of those things of like just how compared to XP, if you go to XM Cloud, there's some benefits doing that. And it does become easier to staff and support as a business. You can find a React developer a lot more easily than you could find a very experienced Sitecore developer. So you start being able to mix up your teams, have a better chance of being able to find new folks, which is really advantageous when you're trying to look at how do I optimize my costs as a team. Okay, so let's do a quick review on just XM Cloud. Like I talked a lot about, don't do the upgrades, next gen frameworks, things like that. The rapid innovation cycles, that's a big benefit. Obviously, being able to have not owning all of that infrastructure, that's a big benefit where you do not want to be able to have all of your time in your team going into how do we maintain all these servers and instead focus on something else in the business. All of that adds up to being how do we get a lower total cost of ownership? How do we make it so that as a business, we're not having to spend as much money on running this whole business of a website? And finally, like there's obviously the new pages, there's components. These are great tools that XM Cloud gets to put out there. And you get that kind of low code, no code with components. I'm going to show it a little bit later. And this is, it demos really well. It's not for every situation, but this is a new way of allowing authors to be able to be a little more independent, not have to depend on the IT team as much. And that's really appealing to the business. As a person who leads marketers, they get really frustrated when they have to go to dev to just do something simple beyond what was already in the build. And this is the type of tool that can have that solution for it. So why don't we spend some time not with slides? I'm going to pull up, like, I'm sure many of you have seen XM Cloud before, so this won't be new stuff for you. But as I go through here, I wanted you to just pay attention to from a flow perspective, how different it is from working with Experience Editor, how much of it is available within the screens already there, and then being able to not have to change context quite as much. You still have some different tools that you go to, but so much more of it is right there, not reloading and just working with you. Now, as I get in here, I'm in Pages. I happen to be on our QA site. This is our actual website that we have, and we run in XM Cloud. And I'm just going to go and create us a new page for the demo's purpose. Oh, I left it sitting too long. Let's get that session going again. Now you know it's not a video. Here we go. Let's create a subpage. I'm going to just get a new landing page. So the first thing that we're going to do is set up this landing page, and it's very blank. So there's nothing being added in here. My template just has header, footer, blank area to drop stuff. On the left side here, I can see all the components I could add. There's things built in the component builder. We've got things like forms that we've built out with the new XM Cloud forms. And we have a bunch of components that, as a dev team, we've made available. So these are the ones that most of our website are built in. In this case, I want to put a banner on. I like the multi-banner personally. Some of the authors like other ones. This is the one I like. So I'm going to come in here and let's just do... Oops. Oh, geez, little misclick there. Yeah. I'm doing a few carrots just on here. These special characters are just for some of our CSS that works on the website. All right, so we've got our banner. Notice I'm not having to say there's no reloads. Everything's just saving as I go. And at the bottom here, you also notice that there's like a contextual ability. On the right, I can go in, do a bunch of styling and options that we've set up for the rendering, but I can also go and launch Explorer. So Explorer allows me to get more like a content editor type of view, and I have some other things that I can set that were not available as editable parameters on here. So this is how you do it. I'm just going to add a video in the background. I'm going to copy that over from my notes. And again, I'm not saving or anything. It's just applied, and then I can come over here and I can refresh my canvas. So we're able to get in here. Now I've got my video loading, and you can notice it looks very much like it's an active website running in the editor as we go. Now I could look at this in multiple ways. You'll notice there's a little preview eye in the top as the one way I can do it. I can also start looking at this in different canvas sizes, right? I really like that feature. I think it's a really great quick preview. And when we go to preview, it's unlike XP where you got the ribbon and everything in there. It looks really like how the site would look as it's actually been built. Now, one of the things I want to be able to do is like get some content on this page. And I want to show off the component editor real quick. So I'm going to just bring this component in. All right, so now I've got this component that's been built in the component builder, and you'll notice I have a kind of different right side here that's now been provided. And I have the option where I can open the component builder and go look at all the components, or I can edit this component directly. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to just jump over here, jump into the component builder, and I want to show you some of what the marketers can now do out of the box with the built-in kind of like atomic components that are here. So as you would expect, it's got very simple, I can just change this to XM Cloud, right? It's just typing in there is very easy. And the properties line up on the right if you have anything for that particular piece of component. Now, I want to be able to add some elements, this little add element. Now, you can see here, these are all the little pieces of atomic elements that are being added in that you don't have to do any code for. It just comes with the tool. I'm going to add a card here. And this card's just going to hold some... I want to break this in, and now I've got this one card where I can start building out my HTML. I'm going to change the columns here. Let's go 2, and I want them to stretch across. All right, so I'm creating a column layout, and I have a lot of different options for how I want to do this within the grid system. And then I'm going to start creating some cards to create my columns. So now I've got one in there. And let's go add a second column in. Okay, so already you can start seeing how I'm building out this piece and not really needing a dev. And I can build kind of my custom component. Now I've got an image. Let's say on the right side, I want a heading over here, maybe a little text. Let's grab a paragraph. And then let's send them somewhere. I can put a button in. Okay, so now we've got a bunch of elements that are here that I want to do. Let's start setting up here. I can go into my image. I've got some content already preset, so I'm just going to paste in. Here's a nice URL, get my image in, and let's start setting some content on the right side. And I want to add a paragraph in here. Just editing as we go, and this is all saving as I go. So on my button, I want to change the text. I don't want click me. I want register now. And then I want to send them to the SUG Chennai's Google Doc. So I can go over here to my link. I want to set it to a static. I'll leave it as the current page. Okay. So I've now done my changes. It's saving it as I go, but it's not actually available to anybody else yet. So I'm going to restage this, make it available to editors. And I'm going to come back to pages. So now as I'm reloading the app, I'm going to have that new version of the component available to me. I can see that the component is still there, but now, hey, my component's been added. And if I go and preview it, I can see what it would look like actually on the website. And I've got this quick new component I just built out from scratch without having to write any code. This is the power that we can show to marketers where they can go, oh, really? I can, like, if I need something that's a little bit different, I can go build that out. It is not for every use case, right? This is like for very specific uses where you might need it, but this is a really great advantage that we just don't have on XP right now. All righty, so let's take a look at what else we got here. Just a moment. I'm going to switch back to slides just for a sec. All right. So on top of being able to do that, authoring UX, we also have XM Cloud personalization. So XM Cloud's personalization is a little bit different than what we've seen in XP. So in XP, what we would do is we would log into the experience editor, we'd pick a component and start putting rules on it. Totally different approach when we start talking about XM Cloud. Now it's about talking about audiences and variants. So at the page level, thinking, oh, I need a whole page that's targeted for people in North America, or I need a whole page that's targeted for people interested in visiting the Taj Mahal. And I would have a page just for that type of, tourist. So we go and you create your page, and then you create a variant on that page, and you add your personalizations to it. That's kind of the way personalization works right now. There is a new A/B testing piece that's now in XM Cloud. That's at a component level where you can go down to a component and start adding that in there, but it's not supposed to mix with the personalization at page level. So that's a little bit different. We're not going to get into that today, but just wanted to call it out. Now, when we do that, we use to build up those variants, we build audiences. And an audience uses the audience builder. And essentially, it's a collection of rules that define who are these people. And you use the built-in conditions and you kind of make your and/ors. And that allows you to then build up the set and say, okay, anybody who matches on these types of properties, whether it's information about the session or the user, these are the people that are going to see this variant. And there's a limitation within XM Cloud, but if you really want to go, you could get into personalized and get really advanced and start doing web experiences and stuff like that. But with the built-in XM Cloud, you can actually do quite a bit. And I'm going to jump into that actually right now. We're going to head back over and let's personalize this page. All right. Personalization at the top, boom, we target over, and now we see those variants on the left over here. We can see there's just a default, and I can add a new one. And for my case, I want to target the West. And specifically, I want to look at people on the West Coast. Now, I get this canvas to try to build my conditions with, and all of the options are available over on this right side. And here we can see there's things about the user that are in here. There's things about their visit, what did they went in, what they've been up to. And we can also see there's things like UTM values, might be helpful for marketers. Now, in my case, what I want to do is I'm targeting based on particular regions in a country. So I want to be able to target 3 of the states that are in the United States. Now, right now, this only targets regions in the US on our implementation here. And I want there to be any of them. So I'm going to switch these over to OR. And let's go California. Yeah. And I want to get those folks in Seattle and also Oregon. So my Canadian team is wanting to target, that West Coast a little bit differently. So I can save this. And now I've got a new audience. This Western audience is now built. So when I come back to my page, now I've got this new Western audience. So I can flick back and forth between the two pages, but right now they look the same. The one difference you'll notice is these little yellow targets. That's telling you pieces you could personalize, but you haven't yet. So let's do a quick personalization and see how easy that is to do. So when I click on it, the right side updates, and now we can see that there's this component options, and I can start creating a new data set. So I'm going to create a new banner right here. We're going to call this the West banner. So now what I'm going to do is create a different version of the banner that'll be displayed only to the West audience. So let's to the coast. So let's say, riding the wave, right? Let's put in some different content. I'm not going to bother doing a video or an image on this one, but you can get the concept of when we go to preview this, I can go and take a look at like what the version of the page is that would be seen by this audience. This makes it a lot easier for authors also to conceptually build out their different personalizations, because they can go, if I was in this set of rules, what would the page look like? I find this a very efficient way for a marketer to think about it, as opposed to the XP world where we would have so many variants and trying to preview all the variants and create different users with different combinations of properties or coming in from different locations. This allows them to really build out those different variants, know what the combination is, and collect all the different elements together. So I think that's a really great improvement that's happened in terms of how personalization is being designed. Okay. Were there any questions around XM Cloud before I get into like some more slide stuff? Was there anything anybody wanted to see in there or wasn't sure about that I just went through? We don't have to be shy.
The personalized here that we used is, do we have to purchase a separate license for that?
Everything I just show is just native XM Cloud. So that's why there's like a limited set of options. But for many customers, that's all the type of personalization they're going to use. So there's no extra license for that. If you then want to go beyond that and start really getting deep into personalization, then Sitecore Personalize might be the option to extend. Some people want to create custom rules and things like that. So like in XP, we could build a custom personalization rule and just add it in. And that's what personalize is meant for, is like that type of advanced personalization. But I would say use what's out of the box. That's definitely a good starting point, and like wait until they're pushing it and go, no, I definitely have to do more.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Nice. Good question. And yeah, just to be sure, everything that I'm showing today is I've got nothing else added in. There's no Sitecore search. There's no personalized CDP, anything. This is just base XM Cloud. Okay. So let's move forward. Let's see, what does it look like if we try to take our teams going forward? Coming back to those, the problem areas I was talking about before of dev, deploy, and the infrastructure management. We take a look just at the local development experience. By going towards the more headless approach, I think the really big benefit is switching from only full stack to now having that faster feed loops capability that we get with kind of a headless build. We can drop .NET altogether if we want. The .NET SDK is there if we need it, but we can start working on things like Next.js. And some devs can work full stack with Docker, build it all up if they want, but your front-end dev teams don't need that. They can just work headlessly and just connect to the cloud. So this really creates just a much better dev experience. And from a CI/CD perspective, there's some configuration we have to do and some management, but all the hard stuff is done for us now. You don't have to be doing .NET builds and try to figure out how to just push the front end items in that and things like that. Like it's very, very smooth. And XM Cloud's able to handle all the environment spin ups to create your new test environment as you do builds. Like it's when you look at how this flows, it's just a much smoother experience and you don't have to manage quite as much. And then when we look at the infrastructure perspective, going to serverless hosting, you've got your front end now fully managed. There's some really great convenience tools in there, some good operational kind of observability stuff as well that's available with those tools. And the infrastructure maintenance goes away, really. You're now letting Sitecore have to be on the hook for making sure everything's available. They're doing all the Sitecore version upgrades. There is stuff you got to do on the front end app. So there's like upgrades are still a thing. For example, I think it was just this week on the change log. They're changing how the Next.js calls for fetch are going to happen. They're getting rid of Axios. But that's only if you upgrade to a certain version of JSS. So there's that JSS upgrade, and then there might be changes you do to your application, but you don't have to worry about the back end. The back end is being handled for you. All right, so I make it sound like magic. You're going to get all this benefit, and so obviously there is a catch, right? There's going to be something. Why doesn't this work? And I want to talk through some of those factors. Why is it that this is not a slam dunk? Why isn't everybody doing this? What are those considerations you got to think about? These are the kind of the 6 areas I want to talk about today. And we're going to go through one by one and then have some questions afterwards where we can talk. I think cost is a big piece now. You know, everybody is talking about how they want to consolidate their stacks, reduce their overall spend. There can be a cost of doing a cloud migration project. So that becomes, what is the business benefit to doing that cost? Am I going to get more value out of doing that? One of the things is whether you're out of compliance. So if you have an organization that needs to be on a supported version of Sitecore, you might be looking at a big project to do a big upgrade right now. Doing that big upgrade is going to have a cost associated to it, and you're not getting anything else. I mean, you might get a new version of Sitecore XP. It has some new functionality in it, but not the way you would if you transition to XM Cloud. So that might be, is it worth it to just get what I already have today just to be in compliance with a support version? Or should I go to something that is always going to be up to date and always supported when I'm looking at that cost? And then there's the question of doing a redesign. Most marketing teams, every like 3 to 5 years, they kind of look at what they got and they go, you know what, this isn't the brand that I want to have right now. And they start thinking about how they can refresh. And so that's a great time to be talking about, well, we're going to be rebuilding anyways. Let's go to headless, whether it's on XP or XM Cloud. Like this is a good time for us to build new components and build it the way we want to go going forward. But if you've just done a massive redesign and your customer has been saying, oh yeah, we just rebuilt like the whole thing, that's not a good time to go and start talking about, oh yeah, let's go move to XM Cloud and rebuild that rebuild all over again. I don't think that's the time to be making that conversation. So that's a kind of consideration to have. Aligning with the Sitecore roadmap is obviously a really good benefit. And so that allows you to look at, okay, well, in the future, our costs are going to be better because we're able to keep with where we're going. For example, going to an XP headless allows you to know that if eventually you want to move to XM Cloud, your cost at that point is going to be lower. So how can we plan our like long-term budget spends in this way to try to gradually get there? And then there's the cost of content migration to try to analyze. Content moving over is not trivial. I'm sure many of you on this call have had to go through those massive, you know, like, oh, there's 40 sites here or 200 sites and we've got to move it all over and automate it somehow. So there's a big like analysis that should be done of like, how much of this are we actually going to need to reuse? How much of it needs to be kept? There, especially if you're doing a refresh, there's a lot of content you might just not apply in the new design. So it's a good time to try to drop that. Quick notes on compliance. Some organizations have really specific needs, whether it's ISO compliance or SOC 2 or HIPAA, things like Vercel, XM Cloud, Netlify, they've got that, but there may be a very specific cert that you need, and you need to know what is in an organization's requirements list and then match it and see whether the vendor has that. Sometimes they don't. There's regional considerations. Some folks may have to operate something out of Germany. And if the organization doesn't have that, they might not be able to use it. There's some customers I've talked to here in Canada who are like, well, can you put the front end in a Canadian region? And the host will be like, no, we don't have a data center in Canada, but you can get in the US. And they're like, that's not going to work for us. So that's a conversation to have. And then there's the concept of control. There's some folks who need to have nitty gritty infrastructure control, and using a server hosted by Sitecore, which has a, it's not fully black box, but it's pretty locked down of what you can do. That may not fit for them. So these are the types of like compliance, security, other things that you may want to be talking to a customer about. And then there's how do you do the project? Okay, let's say you've decided we're going to go do this. We're going to go to headless. Do you do it as one big, huge thing? Or are you going to like incrementally address portions of it and launch it along the way? Both have benefits, both have downsides. I like the start small approach where you can like launch a couple sites and then move the others. It allows everybody to kind of prove out the solution, learn it as they go. Customers can be onboarded. That gives you a really great chance to get started. And then you adopt gradually throughout the organization. But now you're thinking about, oh, I've got to run two environments side by side and like the UX to flip back and forth and manage all the redirects. How are we going to do data? You might be tracking stuff on one site and then tracking stuff in the other site. So that can be a hassle. So sometimes a big bang where you flip over towards the other site and then everything's on the new site. That can be a lot easier just to think of conceptually. So these are some things to think about as you go. If you do go with a phased approach, I like that site search is able to be kind of separated from the XM Cloud migration bit. So like you could go implement site search on the existing site while everyone's working on getting that XM Cloud pilot done. And then be able to start getting a team adopted. Okay, these sites are here. Let's get everybody learning and then get the whole organization into the habit of like cycling through that. Just bring on another site, bring on another team. Just start cycling through that, decommissioning as you go. So that's an example of like the high level overview of an approach that might be an incremental one. Quick note on search and forms. Moving to XM Cloud, moving to headless, it's a very different world from what's in XP. You're going to need a headless site search tool if you're going to have a site search on it. You can use Edge API for a certain number of things. Like I think listings works really well if you want to just like pull like all the blogs or something like that. You can just do that with the API. We do that on our site, but it's not a search tool. If you want like a nice faceted search or something like that, you're going to have to get something. Sitecore has something. You've got alternatives as well that are out there, Coveo and some others. But finding that tool is going to be key to planning this move. And then forms. If you go to XM Cloud Forms, it's not at all compatible with what Sitecore MVC forms are. There's not really a migration path, so you got to be planning how are we going to move over, what part of the sites need to be re-implemented. And you may decide, actually, we want to do custom forms. We don't want it to be marketing-driven forms. There's also a different strategy now. When we go headless search, for example, we're not limited to what the Sitecore indexes are anymore. We could index anything. The search could be this site. You could be pulling in things from the intranet. You could be pulling stuff from some other site, whatever you want to index. So your strategy changes as to like, what is our experience now that we've unlocked this new opportunity? And you've also got with the forms piece, what systems are we going to integrate with? It's got this capability to do webhook kind of submits. It doesn't store the data anymore, so I've got to put the data somewhere. So we got to think through what is our form strategy? Where does stuff go? Am I centralizing stuff? It's not just automatically, oh, everything goes in Sitecore anymore. We've got to think about the architecture a little. And from a developer experience perspective, I'm sure a lot of you here on this call have some .NET background like me. We've got to upskill. Like we got to learn these new things. We could try to learn at least the .NET piece with the .NET SDK, but almost all applications that are going out there, Next.js is the one that's getting chosen. There's some React as well. Angular, is getting popular again. There's different options that are out there, but traditional .NET MVC teams have got to learn all this stuff. I still have no idea what half of the React like page lifecycle stuff works. I kind of have to look at other people's code and like reverse engineer how all of this works. But that's a piece that teams have to plan for. And serverless hosting, in and of itself, while very easy to use in general, you've got to think about how this works in the DevOps plan of a traditional team. For example, there are security teams that want to gate deployments and not have stuff go out. They may not know how to bring a SaaS serverless hosting thing into their idea of how all of their procedures and policies work. So that's something to have to like think through with the organization. Is like, how are they going to learn about it and then adapt it into their policies? CMS customization is another thing I mentioned earlier that, it's discouraged in XM Cloud to really go in and start editing the CMS. So how are we accomplishing that? How do we look at our existing applications, start depending less on things like pipelines in the layout service and stuff like that? That kind of approach is something we need to be planning for. If we can do it on the existing implementation, and then it'll be even easier to move to XM Cloud later because you've already kind of removed all of that. And then serialization is a change also from a DevX perspective. You might be used to using Unicorn or TDS, and for XM Cloud, it's SCS, Sitecore Content Serialization. That piece is where you got to learn that new tool and get used to having that in your project as opposed to maybe some of the other tools. Finally, XM Cloud personalization. I showed you what it was like. It's very different from XP. It's driven by Sitecore Personalized, but you can also then get Sitecore Personalized on top of it. The whole approach doesn't migrate. This is not a copy paste, like let's take what's in XP and bring it over. I think teams, like I mentioned earlier, should just start with what's in basic XM Cloud and then wait to go up once they know they have the need, right? Build out from, adopting personalization and then go. There are some customers who are already way deep in the personalization weeds and they need to go straight to personalized because what's in XM Cloud won't meet them. But that's a small minority, I think, of the Sitecore customers that are out there now. I think the numbers I saw before was like 80% of customer needs are going to be met by what's in there already. Thank you. I know that was a lot. I just wanted to share so much about what I've been thinking about on this topic, and hopefully we've been able to learn something. If you've seen all this before, maybe I would like to hear from you. Like, what are the things you're thinking about? What are the stuff that you're wondering about when you move towards a headless approach? How do we get to have something that the customer is going to really want? How do we get that really great performance? So I'd love to turn the tables over to all of you, and let's chat with the time that we have left here and see what is on your thoughts right now.
Hi Jason, this is Vikram. So I have 3 questions. The first
Sure.
one, as you said, for the .NET developers, we have to upscale. So is there any future projects towards the Blazor integration where it's like for the .NET developers, it's easier rather than learning the new technology like Next.js?
So there are advantages of staking on .NET. I would say that the old .NET SDK was limited. For example, the personalization wasn't really in there. You could make it work, but you had to do it yourself. But there is renewed interest on the Sitecore side, and Rob Earlham's been working on the headless SDK and really promoting the improvements for .NET to be able to get that and make it easier. So there is investments happening on Sitecore to make .NET still an option for teams who don't want to upskill. I don't know that .NET is going to meet the needs of a lot of customers when they're looking at trying to build out a team that is like new front-end devs who want to work on the current modern frameworks, buying a tool that doesn't that has the capability for that Next.js, I think, or React for that matter. That fits in well with a lot of what customers are looking for. But for teams that already have a lot of .NET in, I do think the SDK is getting better. I don't think it's where it needs to be yet, but at least they're working on it. That's good.
Yeah. So this XM Cloud needs a license, otherwise the developer cannot experiment or can practice. Is that true?
So they got away from having a license perspective. So now what you need is access to the cloud portal and have a provisioned XM Cloud in there. So there's no license file anymore that you need. If you're working locally, yes, there's like the local installation that you can do, but the cloud portal is what you want to have access to, and that's the piece that they gate now. So as partners, anyone who works at a partner, they can get into the XM Cloud portal and start spinning stuff up in there. But as a customer or as an independent, it now becomes a little harder to get in, right? Because you
Yeah.
haven't bought anything, so you don't have this partner access to the portal. You don't have the ability to spin up. You can try to run it locally, but then it's still going to force you through the cloud portal authentication. So you still need some way to log in there. Now I would say that even on XP today, you need a license file, right? Like there's no free dev instance, and so there's no trial.
Yeah.
At least at my time at Sitecore, that we were pushing always to try to get, how do we get some dev access so the devs can just pop in and try it out? But it's quite costly, I think, for them to try to run those free instances. So it might be a while before we see that world.
Yeah. So the next question on XM Cloud. So you mentioned about there is a migration cost for the company. So
Yep.
after the migration, is it comparable with the like every year the company or the business has to pay for the license versus XM Cloud cost? Is any comparable numbers?
I mean, the numbers are different because it's different stuff that you're dealing with. So, like, for example, if you're in XP right now, you have your, there's two models of licensing. There's like folks who are on perpetual that you paid once and then you just have your maintenance cost. So that's one way of doing it. Then there was the subscription model on XP where they're paying every year, right? They have like an annual fee that they pay for the software. So that is closer to what XM Cloud does, where there's like an annual fee that's on it. But customers who are running on their own, they also have their annual cloud hosting fees that they're paying to somebody else, like Microsoft for their Azure, for example. And so that gets kind of subsumed into the cost that you're paying Sitecore. So when you think about like what is the like operational cost, you should be looking at how much does it cost for our staff to manage it, how much does it cost for our Azure bill, for example, and what is our licensing cost, and then comparing that against, okay, what does the XM Cloud cost do? Now, the prices I've seen from Sitecore recently are getting very competitive, especially on, I've found the ones on the lower end. Like we've gone into customers now that I would have thought were not a fit before, and Sitecore is finding for those customers at that end a way to make the annual look good, but they tend to show pricing as like, here's first year, second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year, and you see the number going up. There's this growth over time. So
Yeah,
that's
there's an
something that.
uplift. Yeah.
So customers sometimes look at that and they go, wow, year one looks really great, right? And then they look at year five and they're like, really? But then they can also mentally think about, okay, well, 5 years from now, where's our business 5 years from now? And is that growth what we're looking at as a growth as a business? So, there's ways to look at it. Rob, sorry, I think I interrupted you. You were
No,
talking.
yeah, I just wanted to confirm that I think it's compared to the running cost of XP on your own cloud, that could be more expensive, and it certainly also helps in developing faster and more efficient, or not only for you as a partner, but also for the customer authoring the environment and creating content. And it's so there's the benefit is broader than only the license cost. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Probably last one question. So if for any reason, like as you covered already, like for compliance reason or non-customizable of the CMS, is it still possible to stick with the XP, or it's eventually like XP will be no more available for the
Well, I
not
don't work at
supported in?
Sitecore anymore, so I don't have to like talk about how XP will live forever. Sitecore's positioning is that XP is totally something that they are working on, and they've got a roadmap for. When they go to Symposium, they're showing their multi-year roadmap of what they're doing on XP. So it is not gone yet. They're definitely making sure customers are getting more. And there's actually some interesting stuff that they're trying to do in terms of modularizing it so that they can tie it into the composable story. So I think before it was, do you stay on the monolith or do you go to composable? And they've switched that now. Now it's like, oh, well, just XM and XP is just part of the composable, right? It's just like you had XM Cloud. You just own that piece. You can still get personalized. You can still get this and add it on to your bits, right? I think that's now the story of how they want to treat this, that everything else that Sitecore has can fit in with what you have. That being said, when they talk about roadmap, Pages isn't showing up as the editor for XMXP on any of those near-term roadmaps. They don't talk about components and how that's going to work with that, right? So it's clear that at least when I look at like where they're investing and where they're improving with the AI and stuff, there's some stuff happening on XP. But if you're a customer and you want to be on the latest and greatest and get everything, you're getting a more value out of going with where they're investing in the SaaS platform.
Cool. Thanks a lot.
Don't get me started on stream. I don't even, Rob, I don't know. You were at Symposium, right, Rob?
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
So you saw like the AI push, everything AI, right?
Absolutely.
I think that is getting people excited, and that's very aligned with the composable SaaS model. I think some of those pieces are going to work on XP. But I don't know, Rob, if you saw any pieces.
XP is included in the stream proposition. But obviously the one of the, I think, benefits of stream is that it integrates with all of the other products. So that if you want to leverage most of it, then the cloud products, I think, offer you a more complete package. But yeah, absolutely. I think they shared that they are investing more in XP and bringing some features back, and it still is a viable choice if you start a new platform and they require, for example, a private cloud setup or have some other hosting requirements. But if it's up to me, I also always pick XM Cloud.
Yeah, but you're right, that point around those like private clouds and stuff like that. There are organizations that have like rules.
We still see that, yeah.
But even banks are like, we need to go to the cloud now. Like there's very few industries that are left that are like, we need to own the infrastructure. We're the only ones who could do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are great questions, Vikram. Thank you so much for those. Now, I know that we're running a little bit out of time before we're going to get, we've had an hour here. So I'm not sure. Did anybody else have something else they wanted to talk about? Anything on your mind, Rob?
No, I love seeing this, and it was great talk and great explanation, Jason. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Jason, I have one question here. Have you seen any specific clients trying to migrate where they have heavy XP customization, like they have edited a lot of pipelines, they have also some updated content editors are also customized, along with maybe a couple of customization on Solar end as well. Like you see every part where Sitecore is interacting. In case if they have these kind of customizations, do you think it's pretty easy to still migrate to XM Cloud?
I think there are different reasons for those customizations. I think some customers bought XP, were told it was highly customizable. And so their approach when they implemented was, I can get whatever I want. So I'll just ask for it, and then all these customizations happen. So if you think, if someone was to walk in and to that same customer and then say, here's XM Cloud, here's what you can do, what would they do at that point? What is meaningful for their business and build on XM Cloud? And I think if that is the approach that is taken, yes, it's much easier because you're now thinking in the context of XM Cloud. However, there are going to be businesses where it's like, no, we needed these customizations because of regulatory reasons or business organization reasons, that this is the only way stuff works. If we don't do this, everything falls apart. I think that's going to be a more complex thing, because now you've got that's not a migration so much. Those customizations, you just have to do them a different way. So for example, you can change how things happen in the XM Cloud editor by doing things into your front end app, which then surface to the authors in editing mode. But you're essentially having to rebuild editing interfaces at this point. That's where you have to like think about it in a different way. Maybe it's actually they need a different tool that integrates with XM Cloud, and start thinking about XM Cloud not being a development platform, and XM Cloud is more like it's a piece in a web of applications that happen to all go under the same authentication, but they are different applications that are all consuming each other. So I think that starts getting to a more complex migration at that point.
Yeah.
But I think the first step I would do is I'd question, why do those customizations exist? Did you only do it because you could ask for what you wanted? What would you ask for now? What is your actual like need? Because maybe XM Cloud does it better. You don't have to customize it, because the way XM Cloud does it now is actually more closer to what they actually needed.
Okay. Yeah. And also another question. I know we are top of the hour. Just one last question here. Sorry for this. There are a couple of modules which are also integrated with Sitecore XP, right? There are several modules like Brightcove and maybe few other modules, custom modules, which are also integrated. And obviously, we don't have everything on XM Cloud. So this sometimes could be a showstopper for a couple of migrations.
Absolutely. Modules are an interesting thing because of the way Sitecore kind of tried to treat itself as like everything goes through me. So it all has to come into the authoring interface. When we go headless, though, you can start thinking of a headless app as being the piece that consumes everything. You don't necessarily have to have everything in the application. Now, from an authoring perspective, something like Brightcove, actually, you want to have that ability of like, I want to choose the video in Brightcove, put it on the page here. And now you're thinking, okay, well, instead of having that nice UI, now I've got to go to Brightcove, find a URL, drop it down in a text field, and then the app will figure it out. And this is where you start having to build the integration and yourself. I'm hoping these vendors are going to work with the webhook system, figure out ways to do it themselves. DAMs are a very popular thing to integrate with, and I think we need to see a better DAM integration from XM Cloud. Right now, there's ways to hack it. We're having to do that on a couple of projects where I think it was Christian Hahn did like a cool way to do, I can't remember which one it was, but he showed like how to bring a DAM into XM Cloud with what's available today. And it works, but I would have never thought that is the way you should do it. So I think there's some improvements that they have to go in XM Cloud from an integration perspective. And they've talked about doing it, but I don't think it's there yet to have native integrations that are really easy to set up and have like plugin library of modules. They want to get there, but I don't think that they're there yet.
Okay.
And you're right.
Thank
That's
you.
a showstopper for some customers. And then maybe XP headless is right for them. Maybe that's the way that they need to go so that they're aligned. And then they can be ready when XM Cloud catches up to them, that they're like, well, we're already on the right structure. Our stuff's already headless S6A. We're on Next.js, and we just boop, point it over. It's not that easy, but the idea of that.
Yeah, I get the idea. Yeah, it's much more closer, right, to migrate to XM Cloud.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any other questions from anyone else? Okay, I think we don't have any more questions. So I thank all the participants who attended this session and asked great questions to make this session lively. And a special thanks to our guest speaker, Jason, for the great session. It was an eye-opening experience, especially with XM Cloud features. And I thank everyone. Have a nice day and rest of the evening.
Have a great one all. Thanks so much.
Good day. Bye.
All right.
Thank you.